Good afternoon and thanks for joining us for a Tax Practitioners Board webinar. My name is Lun Lak and I'm joining you from Gadigal country. I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. I would like to pay my respect to them and their cultures and elders past and present. To begin, I have a few quick housekeeping messages. First, you may notice that we are using a new webinar provider. We heard your feedback and can now open our webinars to a larger audience and have additional functionality available to support your engagement and interaction with us. You can access the slides in the platform today, or you can also obtain a copy of the slides by visiting our webinar resource hub at tbb.gov.au/webinar-hub. We'll also email you a copy of the slides after the webinar as usual. Today's webinar counts towards your continuing professional education or CPE, and you can claim 1 hour for attending. In relation to claiming your CPE, we will issue an attendance certificate to those staying on for the duration of the webinar. In today's webinar, we'll provide a quick overview of the continuing professional education requirements, which we'll refer to as CPE. Then we'll open the floor to you to ask any questions you have in relation to CPE. To ask questions, simply type your questions into the Q&A panel. You can also use the chat function to speak with other participants, but if you do need a response from us, be sure to use the Q&A. I also want to note that we do have a lot of people online today, so we may not get to all of your questions. However, we will answer FAQs via our webinar resource hub. So keep an eye out on our website and we will share responses to the commonly asked questions there. Also a reminder to keep your comments courteous and professional. Now I would like to introduce our speakers for today. We're joined by TBB board member Deborah Anderson and TBB's Director of Policy and Legislation, Tarek Kumar. Welcome to you both. I'll now hand over to Deborah to kick things off.
Thank you, Lun, and welcome to everyone who's come along today. And for those of you who may be watching on the recording later on our YouTube channel, and just remember, if you are watching on the YouTube channel, you can also claim this as CPE as well. So, as Lun said, we'd like to answer all your questions on CPE today. So please make sure you put your questions in the Q&A. And you've probably noticed, I know Lun mentioned, we do have a new platform. I have a new microphone, so I'm very excited. And yes, it's pink. So please bear with us if there are any technical things, but we know how much you wanted us to increase the capacity in our webinars, so here it is. So I'm really glad to see some of the positive comments in the chat today. So let's get the conversation started, and before we get into the Q&As, I'm going to do a really quick run through our CPE policy, just so that we can get the basis down and then we can answer some of your specific questions. So today I'm just going to cover things like CPE hours, the CPE period, what is considered CPE, and how you need to record it. So as professionals, I'm sure you all understand the importance of keeping your knowledge up to date and staying on top of the ever-changing world of tax law. So let's look at how you can do this and also do it while complying with your TPB obligations. So the Tax Agent Services Act 2009, or I'll call the TASA for short, highlights the importance of CPE for registered tax practitioners. And completing CPE is a requirement of the Code of Professional Conduct, and it's also a condition for renewing your registration. CPE helps you maintain and enhance your knowledge and skills relevant to the tax agent or the BAS agent services that you are registered to provide. And the reason is that this is a consumer protection objective of the TASA to ensure that the community can trust and rely on the services and advice provided by their tax and BAS agents. So the more skilled and the more knowledgeable you are, the better you can support your clients and contribute to the integrity of the entire tax and super system. Completing your CPE helps you stay ahead and sharpens your expertise in the tax agent or BAS agent services that you provide. So once you are registered with the TPB, you need to start undertaking CPE. When you renew your registration, you must be able to confirm that you have met the TPB's CPE requirements. If you are not able to confirm that you have met the CPE requirement on renewal, you are not eligible for renewal and you will not be approved. As you can see, it's just not worth risking your registration after you worked so hard to get it. Now, how many hours of CPE do you need to do? Well, the answer to that is actually it depends. And we understand that life gets really busy and not all years are equal. So our CPE periods are based on a 3-year period so that you've got some flexibility about when you do your CPE. Now, for tax agents, they need to complete a minimum of 120 hours of CPE over a 3-year period, and BAS agents need to complete a minimum of 90 hours of CPE over a 3-year period. Now, both tax and BAS agents need to complete a minimum of 20 hours of CPE each year. So that's 120 over 3 years for tax agents, 90 over 3 years for BAS agents, but a minimum of 20 per year. So that gives you some flexibility. Now, if you have a condition attached to your registration, so it could be, for example, you have a superannuation only or an R&D condition on your registration, you need to do 45 hours of CPE over 3 years and a minimum of 5 hours of CPE per year. Or if you are a tax agent with a tax financial advice condition, you have to complete 60 hours over 3 years and a minimum of 7 hours per year. So there are also special categories for quantities surveyors and also fuel tax credits. So if you'd like to double check your category to make sure you're getting it right, you can refer to our CPE guidance on our website, which lists the minimum hours requirements for the different categories and if you've got any condition on your registration. And as always, we will send you an email after today's session and we'll put a link to that CPE page in that email for you. So now let's talk about how that 3-year period works. So the CPE period will generally be the 3-year period beginning on the date when you registered and ending on the date that your registration expires, or on the anniversary of that. If you are a new tax or BAS agent, after July 22, the CPE requirements apply from your date of registration. But if you are a member of a recognised professional association, you might have a different CPE period. So what we do is we allow you to select a CPE period that either begins on the 1st of January to the 31st of December, or you can go 1st July to the 30th of June if that aligns with your recognised professional association. So you do need to make that election. You don't need to tell us what your election is, but if you make that election, just make a note of that somewhere in your TPB folder. And we've allowed that flexibility in our policy to help you align your CPE period with the CPE period of your recognised professional association, so you don't need to manage 2 sets of dates. Now, a question we get asked all the time is, what is relevant CPE? So as a general rule, CPE should be relevant to the tax agent or the BAS agent services that you are providing. So that is, there needs to be a sufficient connection, or in tax terminology, a nexus between the CPE topics and the tax or BAS service that you're providing. And any training or presentation that you choose to attend for your CPE should be provided by people or by organisations that have suitable qualifications and or practical experience in the relevant subject area. Now, that said, we also accept topics that help you run an effective practice and also provide you with a competent service to your clients. So, for example, we also allow topics such as cybersecurity, which is really important in this ever-changing world, practice management, and also things like business ethics and digital literacy. And I'm also really pleased to add that our policy specifically allows you to include up to 10% of your hours on educative mental health and wellbeing topics. Unfortunately, yoga classes are not included, but certainly there are more than enough mental health and wellbeing webinars and things out there for you to do, so make the most of it. Now moving on to types of CPE activities. Now there are so many different types of things you can do that can count as CPE, and there is a non-exhaustive list on our web. Feel free to look at that. But it could be things like attending the webinar, like the one you are right now, and that could be live or recorded. So for example, I know we've already had questions in the chat, which I am trying to keep an eye on this new platform, saying, look, I don't often get to come to webinars. What about if I watch a recorded one? Does that still count? Absolutely, it still counts. And just make sure you put that in your CPE log on the day that you actually watch it and say it was the recorded version. But I'll come to that later. It can also cover things like listening to relevant podcasts. It could be doing a course, and that could be, for example, upskilling. It doesn't include your original course when you become registered. So if you had to do a Cert 4 to become a BAS agent, that Cert 4 does not count. But if, for example, you did your Cert 4 and then you decide, oh, I might go and, do a diploma, or I might get a degree, that would count if it was within the field of tax and accounting. Or it could be, for example, if you're a tax agent, you go to do a Masters of Tax or something like that, that could count as well. It can include things like face-to-face learning or online learning, and even in-house training. So if you work for an organisation that does in-house training, as long as the subject is relevant to the tax or BAS services being provided, and that the person has the required knowledge and skills in that area, absolutely it can be counted. And finally, research and technical reading. So there is a 25% cap on research and reading. So this means you can't count more than 25% of your CPE hours in that 3-year period. It is capped at that for technical and professional reading. As I said, there are lots more examples of CPE activities on our website, and we'll share a link to that later as well. Now let's move on to another really important aspect of our CPE requirements, which is the record keeping side of it. And I know as tax and BAS agents, you all really appreciate the importance and relevance of keeping good records. So don't let yourself down by not keeping good CPE records, because remember, it is crucial to maintaining and renewing your TPB registration. At any time, you need to be able to demonstrate to the TPB that you have completed CPE that meets the TPB requirements. And we can ask you to provide your CPE records at any time during your registration. So as you know, we do, for example, personal tax obligation checks. We also do random CPE checks. It could be that we are looking at your renewal and we ask for the CPE check log then, or it could be that we've received a complaint about competency, and that's an area that we often ask for the CPE log. So it's really important that you have your CPE log and that you record your CPE activities as soon as possible and as practical after you complete the activity. In fact, it's a requirement that the CPE log be a contemporaneous log, which I had to look up when I first started with the TPB, and that just means as you go. So your log needs to include sufficient details about the CPE activity that you did. So things like what date did you do the activity, who provided the training, or what was the podcast or the webinar, etc. What was the format? So whether it was a webinar, whether it was face-to-face, whether it was an audio book, for example. What were the topics that were covered? And that's really important that you put that in there so that it shows that nexus to the services that you're providing, and the number of hours spent on that activity. And wherever possible, and we know this you don't always get it, but some kind of evidence. So whether that be a certificate of completion, whether that be an email attendance certificate, something like that evidences that you did the course or the training. Now, we have a really simple CPE log in a PDF format on our website. So if you don't have a format, feel free to download that, use it, or make one into an Excel document, and you might find that helpful. But my personal tips are, if you are a member of a professional association, most of them have online CPE logs. Use it. They're fantastic. I know I use mine. Enter your CPE into your online calendar. So, for example, I use Outlook and I put all my CPE in there, or, when I'm doing an online webinar or, one of those, I just put it in there and I categorise it in orange, called CPE, and that way it makes it really easy to search for if I do need to, and it also usually has the confirmations on it. And also I keep a folder with all my CPE confirmations, completion certificates, acknowledgements, anything like that. So again, if I need to substantiate it, and of course, if we do ask for your CPE log, often we will ask you to substantiate it. And it's amazing how many people I've seen in the conduct committee when we're doing disciplinary hearings where people have said they've done CPE, we've contacted the provider and the provider has no knowledge of that person either ever even subscribing to it or applying to do it, or in some cases people have even paid to do a course and then never did it. So we do check up on that. So please, honesty, integrity, code item 1, really important, but also making sure that you keep good records for your CPE. And remember, if you do maintain a CPE log for your recognised professional association, in most cases that will generally meet our requirements too. So you don't need to keep a separate record for TPB and your professional association. And last but not least, you must keep your CPE records for 5 years from the end of that CPE period. So standard, record keeping obligation there, 5 years from the end of your CPE period. So I think that's my part of the formal part of today's webinar over with. So now I'll hand over to Julie and we're going to go through some of the questions that you've submitted today.
Thank you so much for that, Deborah. It was really great that you could set the scene for everyone today on the topic of CPE. And we have had a lot of questions coming through while you've been chatting away. So I'll actually put the first one to you here. It's about the topic that you were just sort of talking about, which is recording hours. So Roberta's asked, how can I claim hours spent on research and reading as CPE?
Record it. So that's the really easy way of doing it. It was Roberta, was it?
Correct.
Julie? Yep. So Roberta, just make sure that you record it. So I do a lot of preparation and research myself in my role with the TPB. And one of the things I do is I use timekeeping. I use that for my clients as well because I'm also a tax agent. So I just start and stop in my timekeeping software, and that's my contemporaneous log that I keep there, and then I put it into my professional association online CPE register. When I finished it, I put it in as a, this was on that particular project.
Great, thanks, Deborah. And Tariq, welcome to the webinar, by the way. Just wondering if you wanted to add anything there and maybe just sort of direct people to our CPE log that we have might be a good place to go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Deborah's covered the issue there. The only thing I'll add is for the reading, it's just a 25% cap. So just make sure you stay within those limits for the reading aspect.
And, can I just add to that, Tariq, I know there's a 25% limit, but and you have to do for tax agents 120 hours, but don't limit yourself. Like I know when I did my CPE log the other day, it was 330 hours or something like that, right? So just because you do more, record all of it. Some of that will be reading and research that you can't count towards the, it only amounts up to the 25%. But if you record everything that you do, it gives you that flexibility as well. And remember, the more educated and up to date you are, the better you are and the more you can charge.
Good advice.
Tip for free.
Just while we're just on that topic, there's just a question here around the clarification of unstructured. So I've got a question here that's saying the unstructured percentage allowed is 25%, which is correct. We've just discussed that. So can I record 15 hours of unstructured CPE if I do 60 hours in a total for a particular year? Tariq, do you want to take that one?
So I can help with that one to start with, Julie. So the cap is actually on the technical and professional reading of 25% of the total. It's not on all unstructured activities. So you can do other unstructured activities, and Deborah gave some examples of those in her presentation. So that's probably the first thing to note. If you're a tax agent, you're required to do the 120 hours over the 3-year period, which would mean that 25%, you could claim up to 30 hours total out of that 130 for technical professional reading. But again, I'll just reiterate, you can add to that with other unstructured activities outside of reading.
Thanks, Tariq. I've got a question here from Sock, and Sock's asking, I also work for a TAFE teaching accounting and running my own parcel of clients. Does teaching, which is average of 2 to 3 days per week, go towards my CPE? Tariq, do you want to go on that one as well?
Yeah, sure. So absolutely it can. Like Deborah said, you need that nexus between what you're doing, the activity, and the tax agent or BAS services you provide. So provided it's relevant to the services you're providing, that activity of teaching absolutely will count towards your CPE.
But just also, I think it's a really good point, Tariq, and a great question, by the way. But it also then leads to, well, if I'm just doing tax work or BAS work, does that count as CPE? And no, it doesn't. And that's a really frequently asked question as well. So teaching, it's the teaching is slightly different. It is very nuanced, but also they're doing a lot of prep for those courses and things like that. So just be aware that actually doing your work does not count as CPE.
Thanks, Deborah. I've got another question that's sort of along the same lines here from Ratna, and they're asking, if I do self-study or research a topic, I assume I can claim CPE hours. Sometimes I have to research on a specific topic affecting a client, and these hours are sometimes done after hours and can mount up to many hours overall.
Yeah. Can I answer that, if you don't mind? Yes. So research is part of that unstructured that is capped at 25%. So if you're a tax agent, it's capped at that 30 hours over the 3 years. And unstructured doesn't have to be, or research doesn't have to be outside of work hours. So it can be during work hours as well. And you could be getting paid for it as well. It's still a CPE activity, but again, it's limited to that 25%.
Thank you. The next question I've got here is from Angela, and Angela's asking, after obtaining formal qualifications, so registration, etc., without paying money, sometimes many hundreds, thousands of dollars, on third-party seminars and courses, etc., how can I meet my CPE obligations without incurring any costs?
I'm probably a good one to answer that, unless you wanted to jump in first, Tariq, and I'll add. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we've got some similar points, but there are a lot of free activities out there that, entities provide. Certainly one that you're attending right now around from the TPP, you can claim that as CPE. You can look at other organisations as well, particularly the Australian Taxation Office might provide some events that you can count towards CPE. But yes, maybe, Deborah, you could give some more examples there of, the types of things people could do. But there are a number of free ones out there that you can attend.
There are so many free ones. It's actually, it's crazy when you start looking at it. So I'm not sure where you're based, but in New South Wales, you can sign up to the New South Wales Women in Business or the New South Wales TAFE websites. They do lots of free webinars. A lot of the, like City of Sydney, for example, the local councils do lots of free webinars. Tariq, you mentioned the ATO Open Forums is a good one. Any discussion groups, with professional associations. So if you go to a coffee club or, those types of places where you're actually doing a discussion group, they're not structured CPE, it's unstructured, so it is limited, but still, you can count it. And then we also have a lot of the software providers within the industry. So, your MYOBs, your Xeros, your BGL do a lot of free webinars. Even if you're not a subscriber to BGL, they do lots of tax type webinars as well, and BAS type. So things, there's definitely a lot there. Get on your local Facebook group for your tax or BAS agents or bookkeepers or accountants Facebook groups, and put the question out there, and you'll get inundated with lots of specific recommendations for really good ones that people have already done.
And just to add to that, remember that you can do up to 25% with technical professional reading, which won't cost you either. So you only really need to make up that balance of 75%.
Yeah. And that was a really good point, because if you subscribe to our newsletter, you can include that. And if you subscribe to the ATO newsletters, and they've got a bunch of newsletters, one specifically for tax agents, one specifically for BAS agents, but they also have some special interest areas. So it could be superannuation, it could be small business, lots of different areas you can sign up for, and all of that is included in your reading.
Okay, thank you both for that. I've got another question now that's come through from Celia, and this one's around mental health. So Celia's asked, I'm doing a 2-day course on mental health first aid through IPA later this month. It counts as CPE for them, so can I assume that it also counts towards the TPB's CPE requirements as well?
It does, and I can say I've done the course myself. You're going to love it. Really good course, but remember it only counts 10% of mental health and wellbeing training can count towards your CPE for the 3-year period. But you will absolutely love that course, and I highly recommend it to anybody.
Thanks, Deborah. We also had a really great webinar last month with Beyond Blue, which is available on our YouTube channel if people are interested in doing that, which does count as well. Okay, so next question I've got here is from Paula. So Paula's just saying, I'm a bit confused. The 120 hours minimum for 3 years and 20 minimum per year. Therefore, if I do 20 hours per year, then I will fall short by 60 hours. How does that work? Tariq, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, sure, Julie. That's a good question. We've seen that come up a couple of times. So when we talk about our CPE minimum requirements, 120 hours for tax agents over the 3-year period and 90 for BAS agents over the 3-year period, that's the total that has to be done over that 3-year period. Now, when we talk about flexibility, if you're looking at, for example, the tax agent over 3 years, normally if it was an equal split, it would be 40 hours in year 1, 40 in 2, and 40 in 3, and that's how you'd make up your 120. What the 20 minimum for the year is designed to do is to give you that flexibility throughout that 3-year period. So you might only do 20 in the first year, but you'd make it up in years 2 and 3 to get to your 120. So that's what that minimum 20 is. It doesn't mean that you only have to do 20 each year. It just means that in any given year, you have to do a minimum of 20, and then you use the balance of your CPE period to make up to the 120 or to make up to the 90, whatever the case may be.
And that just allows you to go on a holiday, or, if you're, having a child, or, you've got caring responsibilities, those types of things, which is why we've kept it over the 3-year period, even when we went to annual registration.
Thanks, Deborah. And I think that's a good segue to my next question, actually, from Alice. And Alice has asked that I've taken maternity leave 3 times in the last 5 years. Is there a leniency in regards to this?
Yep, so I can jump in here, Julie. Yep. There isn't a leniency in terms of a reduced amount, but again, we have that flexibility. So, you might only do the 20 in year 1, but you can make it up in the following years. And that's what that minimum standard is designed to do, is to cover those sort of situations, such as maternity leave, like Deborah said, such as if you go on a long holiday, and it just gives you that flexibility to manage it over a 3-year period rather than having to do a strict 40 hours every year type thing.
And I guess I'll just add to that, because I know one of the questions we always get is, but I only work part-time. Why do I need to do the full 120 hours or full 90 hours? And the short answer to that is yes, you do, because you need to be just as competent. And I guess if you think of it like a doctor, right? So it might be a specialist, a surgeon. That specialist only works 1 day a week, and we go, do they really need to have as much training as the other people who work 5 days or 7 days a week? Yeah, you do. So you need to be just as competent. And I know having 3 children in the last 5 years must have been really busy for you. But also we can attest to there's been a lot of change in the last 5 years as well. So that whole keeping up to date is imperative for the consumer protection, which is what the TASA is actually all about.
Thanks, Deborah. I think that was a great analogy. Makes it a bit clearer for people. So I've had a couple actually asking me about the accounting software, and does that count, if you're doing training in relation to it, does that count towards your CPE?
Yes, it does.
Yep.
So yes, it does, the accounting software, as long as it's related to the services that you are providing to your clients. And So, for example, if you're doing, if you deal with small businesses and you do one of their MYB or Zero courses on that particular product for small business, there's the nexus or the connection there, right? But if you were doing a course on social media, for example, you'd be sitting there going, oh, well, what is the nexus to the business that I'm doing? And it could be that you're actually educating through social media, for example. So those types of things, that's why when we were talking about the CPE log, putting in there what it is that you were actually doing so that you can put that nexus in there. Sometimes it might not be obvious to other people, but you can certainly put that in. But software is a great one because most of those courses are free.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that was raised in terms of, software. And I guess that that gives the indication that you can look a little bit more broadly than just tax technical when you're thinking CPE. You can look at the software that you use in your business, practice management. We've got mental health cap. So there's a number of things that are relevant to your business as a tax agent or as a BAS agent and the services you provide, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tax technical CPE.
Mm. And another example of that is cyber security.
Sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Deborah.
Great minds think alike, Julie. Yeah, cyber security is a really good one on that because the world that we're living in with identity theft and all, fraud, all of those things, cybersecurity, although it isn't tax technical, is actually so relevant to what tax and BAS agents are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So yes, definitely cybersecurity is something we have specifically allowed as part of your CPE. And again, there are some really great cybersecurity ones. I know personally I've done a cyber wardens course. They've got 3 different levels now, really good courses, not only for you to do, but all your staff. And, if you're working with small businesses, being able to say to them, hey, look at these courses as well is a bit of a value add. So go ahead.
Thanks, Deborah. I've got a question now from Wilson, and Wilson's asked, what happens if a practitioner does not meet the CPE requirements? Tariq, I might get you to respond to that in the first instance.
Yeah, sure, Julie. So like Deborah said, there's a number of angles where CPE fits into our regulatory regime. One is under the Code of Professional Conduct, where you have to maintain skills and knowledge of the services you provide. So, if we receive a complaint and we determine that someone might not have provided a service competently, we could look at, issues in relation to the Code of Professional Conduct. And then the other link is that it's actually a registration renewal requirement. So when you come up for renewal of registration, you'll have to show that you've met your CPE requirements. And remember, it's per triennium, even though it's an annual registration, it's a rolling 3-year period. So you'll have to demonstrate that at least you've done the minimum 20 hours, for example, for a tax agent, and that you're on track to meet your 120 over the 3-year period. So a couple of links there. The Code of Professional Conduct one, and then it's a renewal requirement as well.
Thanks. Did you have anything you want to add, Deb?
No, just that it is a requirement, and it's actually one of the major requirements. So it's definitely something you should be keeping your eye on, and unless there are extenuating circumstances, and you can, they would have to be extenuating, I think, but it is a registration requirement that you have done your 90 or your 120 hours per triennium.
Thanks for that. Okay, I've got a couple of questions now just about relevance of particular training options. So the first one comes from Helen, and Helen's asked, what about completing CPA once you become a tax agent? Is that able to be claimed as relevant CPE?
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't be It's not. So, for example, if you did a degree to become a tax agent, that isn't. So, before what you did before becoming an agent is not CPE, but anything after that, that is relevant. And CPE is very relevant to tax and BAS services. And good luck with it.
Next one is bookkeeping counted towards CPE for a tax agent. If you're doing a course in relation to bookkeeping, is it able to be claimed if you're a tax agent, not a BAS agent?
If it's related to the types of services that you're providing. So if you're not providing bookkeeping services, or you're not providing to a cohort of clients that use it, potentially, no, it's not. But if you are, if you're working with small business or big business even, you know, definitely. It's all about that nexus. And again, as tax agents, nexus is something that we're really familiar with on a tax perspective. So remember, that is that's what we need as well when we're looking at CPE.
Excellent, thank you. The next one was from Wolfgang, and Wolfgang's asked, would a uni short course about AI framework be considered relevant for CPE, given that AI is becoming more important in everyday practice? Specifically, the course discusses ethical framework, safety measures, that type of thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
I can go first with that one. Yeah. Deborah's right, absolutely.
Yep.
This is another one of those non-tax technical type topics that can count. We know that practitioners and individuals and people just using AI more often, people want to use it in their business, want to use it safely, and the courses that you do on the use of it as a tool to provide tax agent services certainly can be counted as a relevant CPE topic.
Thank you. I've had a few people asking if they're training staff, does this count as CPE?
Do you want to do that, Tariq, or do you want me to do it?
Yes. So short answer is yes, it can. Again, it has to be relevant to the services that you're providing and the services that the staff might be providing on your behalf. But again, reiterating that earlier point that Deb made, the provision of tax agent services itself is not a CPE activity. So where you're actually just providing a service or assisting staff to provide a service, that will not count as CPE. If you're running a session to train them on a particular topic, then yes, that would be different and that could count.
Great, thank you. I've had a few people asking about conditional CPE and specialisation into specific areas of tax practitioner services. Would you just be able to give a little bit more information, Tariq, on what a conditional registration is, sort of what's required under the CPE obligations?
Yeah, sure, Julie. So a conditional registration is one where when you apply for registration, the Tax Practitioners Board has limited the services you can provide, and it might be by topic, for example, and that's because you may only have experience in that particular area. So, for example, someone might seek registration and they might have a condition that says that they can only provide services in relation to fringe benefits tax and that related topic area. So where there is a condition imposed on your registration, that will change the number of hours that's actually required of you. So strongly recommend you look at our CPE policy. We've got a table on there with the different categories of conditional registrants. And if you're in one of those categories, it'll tell you exactly how many hours that you need to do. And the theory behind that is obviously you're providing services in a limited scope of area, and therefore you don't need to do the full 90 or 120 hours. It's reduced proportionately to the services and the topics you're providing, because you're only providing services in a small topic, not in the broad range of tax services.
And you should know what your registration limit is if you've applied for one with it. Like, it's certainly a very different process of applying, but you can also check on the register, and I believe it shows on our register as well, or contact the team and they can help you if you're not sure.
Great, thank you both for that. The next question I've got here is about authorised CPE providers and whether or not there's a list available that tax practitioners can access to see what providers are actually suitable or not.
Yep, so I can answer that one. We don't actually approve individual CPE providers at the TPB, so there's no approved list as such, but you should have a fair idea in terms of who would be appropriate. We would require that registered tax practitioners use their professional judgment in this regard. Organisations like the TPB, your professional associations, they're reputable organisations that provide CPE type topics. So although we don't recognise and approve particular providers, you can just exercise some professional judgment there and determine what might be appropriate. If you think that there's one on the border where you're not quite sure, reach out to the team and we'll be able to assist there.
Great, thank you for that. So we've talked about doing accounting software courses, and we've said that that's okay to claim as relevant CPE, but if we're actually doing the course as a renewal to update our knowledge, is that also able to be claimed?
Absolutely. And that's what CPE is all about. It isn't about learning something new necessarily. It's about keeping your knowledge up to date. And we all know that things are moving so quickly. We've had changes in superannuation yesterday, for example. Software is changing, every day, every week. AI, cybersecurity, all of those things are moving. And that is why CPE is part of the TASA. To ensure that our registered tax and BAS agents keep their knowledge up to date, and their knowledge being not necessarily what they originally learned, but things change. So definitely those top-up courses are really important.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, I've got a question now from Ralph, and Ralph's asking, are there any mandatory topics that should be completed from the TPB's perspective?
No, short answer to that is no, we don't mandate any specific topics for practitioners to complete. We recognise that every practitioner will be different and they'll provide services in different areas of tax or different areas of BAS. So to allow that flexibility, we don't actually mandate any specific topics or categories of topics that you need to complete CPE. Again, just reiterating the earlier point, it all comes back to relevance. You have to judge what's relevant to the services you're providing, and if you can provide that nexus between the CPE activity you're doing and the service you're providing, that will be fine.
Great, thanks for that, Tariq. Deborah, Lauren's just asking if you could give the name of that mental health course again that you said was so great, the 2-day course.
It's the Mental Health First Aid course. And I know CPA, IPA and CANS were promoting it a couple of years ago for free back then, but I do believe you have to pay for it now. But yeah, look at the Mental Health First Aid course.
Great, thank you. I've got a question from Tracy, and Tracy's asked, do CPE providers need to be RTOs, so registered training organisations? Can you answer that one, Tariq?
Yeah, short answer is no. We don't mandate any requirements or, specifications in relation to what is a approved provider or what a provider can be. So they don't need to be a registered training organisation, but a registered training organisation can provide CPE. So that would be, one type of provider, but no, they don't have to be a registered training organisation.
Okay, thank you. Natasha's asked, is this meeting going to be on replay as she's missed half of it due to work commitments? We do have it available on demand. Natasha, you can watch it after today's session. And you can also get a certificate for watching on demand now under our new platform, which is really great. So I think that's a great benefit to everyone. Next one I've got is, if I complete more than the required minimum hours during a CPE period, can I carry that over into my next CPE period?
Nice try. No, unfortunately, you can't. It is a very good question. Look, no, unfortunately, you can't. But, you know, part of that reason is that things are always changing. So just because you've learnt something today doesn't mean it's going to be like that in 6 months' time, or if we were to carry it forward into 4 years' time. So it is very much based on when you did it. It is restricted to that, but please don't limit your CPE based on that. Keep learning.
Good advice. Thanks, Deb. Okay, next one I've got is from Alice, and Alice has asked, can the training be done in a different language? Tariq, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We haven't had that one before, but I think Deborah's right. Yes, it certainly can be done in another language, provided the topic. Yeah. You go, Deborah.
No, it's provided the topic is relevant to the tax and BAS agent services that you're providing, or is mental health and wellbeing, or cybersecurity. So, you know, they're the sort of, I guess, the requirements there. But definitely, just because it's in another language does not mean it doesn't count. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, the next question I've got is going back to the compulsory issue that we spoke about. And Timber's asked, is it not compulsory that 10 hours of CPE must be on ethics?
So I think what you're thinking
the
there...
TPB, is it?
No, it's not a requirement for the TPB, but you may find that your professional association has mandatory topics. And I know that the associations that I belong to do. So it is something that people get confused about, but do check that you've met your professional association. And as we've said, most of the time, if you've met your professional association's requirements, in most cases you will have met the TPB's requirements as well.
Thank you. Next question I've got is, how does the TPB actually check that CPE requirements are being met?
Yep, so two ways. Yeah, 2 ways we can check here. We obviously do the check at the renewal stage because that's a mandatory criteria for renewal of your registration. So when you fill out your renewal application form, there'll be questions in relation to your CPE. We can do a check at that point. And then, like Deborah said, we can ask for your records at any time. So because there is obligations under the Code of Professional Conduct as well to maintain competency and, you know, knowledge in the services that you provide. If at any stage the TPB is of the view that it wants to inquire about, you know, your compliance with the Code of Professional Conduct, we can do checks at those times as well.
And often when we do investigations, it's one of the things that we ask for if we have a complaint, particularly if the complaint is related to competency. We would ask for a copy of your CPE records.
Thank you. Michelle's asking, how can we claim CPE completion certificate if we view the online YouTube version of the webinar? Unfortunately, you can't get a certificate for watching the YouTube version. However, with our new platform, if you do watch it on demand, you will receive a certificate. So that will be generated automatically when you've viewed the recording on demand. So we'll have that available on our website very soon for you to do that. A couple of quick ones. So Joe says, does it count if you binge watch relevant webinars?
Yes.
I assume it does.
It doesn't matter. if you binge watch, knock your socks off. Absolutely. Just, don't waste it by not recording it, I think is the key there. And I think one of the big things that I see in the Board Conduct Committee is people haven't recorded it. You may have done it, but if you haven't recorded it, you may as well not have done it. So please, contemporaneous log. Make sure that when you do it, you record it, have it in your diary on your computer. As I said, I gave you some tips about what I do with mine, and it does make a difference. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And the next one, is there a percentage cap on webinars for CPE, or could you do 100% of your CPE as webinars?
You could do 100%. There's no cap as such, but I think the recommendation from the team would be that you look to just diversify some of those CPE activities that you do. But certainly we don't, in our policy, there's no cap as such. But yeah, strongly recommend that you do a different range of activities to maximise the benefit from the CPE.
And I think, again, that goes back to relevance, right? So, we want to be making sure that the CPE you're doing is relevant to the tax and BAS agent services you're providing and keeping your knowledge up to date. So, for example, if you binge watched the TPB webinar, on YouTube, and you got, your 120 hours on there, it would actually be questionable whether that was actually 100% relevant, because a lot of them are overlapping, for example, and they're not actually maintaining your skills that are required at all. So, it's really talking about your obligations. So, again, that balance is really important. Remembering why you have to do CPE. It isn't because, the TPB just wants you to, do courses. It's because it's a consumer protection to make sure that tax and BAS agents' skills and knowledge are up to date to help their clients.
Thank you. Okay, another question. How much CPE does this session count for today? You can claim 1 hour for attending today's webinar. And next question, Tariq, this one might be for you. Once I elect my CPE period to align with that of my association's CPE period, can I change that at a later date?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Good question. Generally, you cannot change that CPE period at a later date once you've made that election. The exception to that is if you change your connection to the professional association. So if you're with one professional association at the start, then you move to another association for the purposes of CPE. In that circumstance, yes, you can change, but otherwise, no. Once you've made that election, you got to stick with it.
And I think, can I just clarify on that? Sorry, there is a minor lag, isn't there? So just what Tariq said, 100% if you're changing associations, but the key there is if the association's CPE period is different. So if you were to go from a association that had a January to December CPE and you went to another association that had a January to December CPE, that wouldn't really be grounds for changing. But if you went from one that was 1st of January to December and then you went from 1st of July to 30 June, that would definitely be a reason for changing your CPE period.
Thanks, Deborah. I think that's probably all the time that we've got for questions today. So we might just finish it off there, and I'll just give everyone a little bit of information on how to stay in touch. So if you do want more information, we've got a lot of information on our website at tpb.gov.au that covers all of the topics that we've discussed today, plus a lot more. So I highly encourage you to go there. I also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. You'll get the most up-to-date information there on all the relevant topics. We also have our monthly e-news that goes out. So highly recommend that you subscribe to that. As Deborah mentioned earlier, you can claim CPE for reading that. So it's got a lot of benefits there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and you will receive notifications when we post new videos. So they are all available there for you to watch at your leisure and to still claim CPE, as we've discussed as well today. I wanted to say a big thank you to both Deborah and to Tariq for sharing their insights today. We did get through a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we didn't get to all of them, but we will endeavour to pull together some of the most commonly asked questions and pop those on our website as well, so everyone gets the benefit of looking at the responses to those. So if you're interested in attending another of our webinars, again, just jump on our website at tpb.gov.au/webinars, and we'll have some upcoming ones listed there fairly soon. And then just finally, before we finish up today, we would really love to get your feedback on what you thought about today, and also if you've got any feedback on the new platform, we'd love to hear that as well. So we will have a survey that pops up as soon as you exit the webinar today, and it's very quick, only takes a moment of your time, but does actually add a lot of value to how we present these webinars and the topics that we look at putting on for you. So thank you for everyone for your participation, and we do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks everyone.